Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, the third in our ITSM series. Today we're going into the future a little bit. I think the first couple have been, well attended, and kind of we're more into the nitty gritty around service management and what people are doing today. We are going to kind of continue on that, but more kind of look to the future, some of the things that we're doing at Careworks, and a new project that we're working on called Task Force, which is more of a knowledge education platform. A little bit about me, then a little bit about Careworks, then we'll kind of get to what you guys are here for, which is the actual webinar, The Dawn of Managed ITSM, or ITSM as a Service. The past couple of decades, I've been involved in service management. Started a software company back in 2000 called Enable Technologies, which is now owned by SolarWinds, and really with that business, got a good taste and experience of basically working with IT service providers basically all across North America and eventually globally to help them basically deliver a better type of service primarily to small and medium-sized businesses. So again, that business was one of the first, Enable was one of the first kind of really pioneers in the managed service enabling space, for lack of a better term. And from there, left Enable and then started a company, TUC, that eventually merged and is now Careworks today. And that's actually on the other side of the fence as a managed service provider that, again, is focused in the mid-market. And I know a bunch of you that are on the call today are mid-enterprise IT leaders. And certainly this is, primarily geared at you, whether you're in a vertical market, a regulated industry like healthcare, whether you're in a knowledge-based vertical like education. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there is a ton of requirement around doing technology in a new, better way, what we coin as technology as a service. So what's really interesting about what we're seeing in the mid-market is to some degree some parallels with what we've seen in the channel with managed service providers a few years ago. So hopefully we can draw on that as we go through the presentation today. Careworks is a top 100 global managed service provider. We're definitely, one of the top folks in North America. We also do work over in the UK. As I mentioned earlier, regulated industries is really a key area, and by regulated industries, it's really verticals that are reliant on technology and certainly need to deal with an accredited managed service provider. One of the key vertical markets that we're a player in is senior care, long-term care facilities. And so in terms of what we do, we really do 5 things. We deliver 24/7 service desk, IT service management, automation, security, and kind of next generation self-service, really focused around the end user experience. As you see with the tagline, our vision, what our mantra is about a business below at the bottom of the slide. By the numbers, we have a lot of customers, over 1,000 corporate customers, about 1 million end users that are under some sort of a managing or monitoring with us. So, and again, you see the volume of tickets annually as well. We have an interesting lens into the market, and certainly myself and some of the guys on our senior management team, we've also been on the fence, as I said prior, in the software industry with the MSP platform company I talked about. So I think we bring an interesting an interesting set of skills and really lens into the market that hopefully really do a great job in being a sounding board for our customers, no matter what level that they engage with us. So in terms of today, what we'd like to cover is a little bit of history and really kind of drawing some parallels between the ITSM space and the managed services space, and kind of what we've fused together in this idea of managed ITSM. Certainly you hear, and looking at the polling questions, it was interesting that there's about at least 2/3 of you that feel you have some sort of implementation of ITSM, but really feel it's at a lower standard or immature in terms of its implementation. Even if you're a company out there and you've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in some of the leading technologies like ServiceNow, to a large extent, you've bought the licenses, you've thought you were going to cross the chasm into this new panacea, but you're kind of left with a with a ticketing system that's kind of cost you again a lot of money to get into. So that's this idea of modernizing ITSM, IT service management, and kind of taking it to the next level, and how you can leverage managed services to be able to do that. Next is, really a little bit more about the future. We'll touch a little bit on task force, about this term that we use called ESP, which we feel all of you that are on the call, not only do you need extrasensory perception, you definitely need another type of ESP, which we'll touch on later on and talk about the really exciting things we have going with that knowledge platform that we're launching later on this year. And, definitely like anything, it's 2:00 in the afternoon in the East. I know 11 a.m. for you folks out on the West Coast. We want you to take something away from today. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 pretty good nuggets for you, and certainly some follow-up that you can do with our team. So a little bit of history and definitely taking a look at, at least my experience in the technology industry and having started a couple of companies. Actually, I'm not a technologist. I'm actually an accountant, a CPA by trade. So I've always looked at technology really in both the companies that I've been involved in from the ground up, and also even companies and suppliers that we deal with, really looked at it from the business lens of, again, all of these promises that are made on investments that we make in technology, and we seem like we're ROI'd to death. How does this really deliver value to the business, and how do we leverage technology to be able to do that? So we've certainly seen, a staggering pace of technology evolution and adoption. I think, the Gartner top 10 things that are going to happen in technology, typically 2 of them happen over the course of 10 years. I think I read something last year where Gartner put out a top 10. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, and 9 of the top 10 things have actually happened, right? So there's definitely a lot of evolution that's going on, a lot of adoption, and this, what we kind of coin as consumerization of IT, which has really changed the end user in terms of they're always connected. They've got 3 or 4 different devices. They've still never, read a computer manual, which I think all of us in the technology and the managed services industry are happy about. But safe to say, because they're connected, because they're so reliant, the old way of delivering IT support and delivering technology just doesn't cut it anymore. So what's interesting as well is the space that really, through the enabled days and the first 10, 15 years that I've been involved in the technology industry since 2000 to kind of the early 2010s, managed services was really primarily focused in the SMB as an SMB solution, small and mid-sized business, kind of what we would coin as companies less than 100 or 200 employees. There's tens of thousands of suppliers out there, MSPs, that deliver those services, and they're very mature models. They're primarily, in the mid 90% remotely delivered, highly automated, and really that ecosystem continues to build with companies like SolarWinds now, ConnectWise, LabTech, on down the list. So conversely, the other side, the ITSM space has been around longer, right? I mean, from the IT infrastructure library back in the 80s, it's really the ISO for IT, again, was a standards-based approach to technology, really adopted by the large enterprise Global 1000, even down to the mid-market as well. But really, to some degree, it seems like we're always on a transformation treadmill with ITIL and with the implementation of ITIL. And certainly we've seen companies like ServiceNow come along over the last decade and really rewrite the rules of the game in ITSM. I mean, they're the second software as a service company to $1 billion in revenue that they crossed a couple of years ago. But still, I mean, the implementation of ServiceNow obviously requires hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's a whole ecosystem very similarly to the MSP space built for the ITSM market, but again, it's built for more the enterprise. So there's this interesting challenge for the mid-market and vertical markets, certainly like healthcare, senior care, where it's kind of the MSP, the automation and all the promises of value that's delivered within that space. There isn't a lot of people that have actually graduated to be able to deliver it to more sophisticated, larger organizations, hundreds of employees, thousands of employees. And conversely, the ITSM market is still really kind of built for the Global 1000, Global 2000. That's the interesting thing of what we call managed ITSM, this idea of how do we fuse the markets together. In terms of the evolution of technology as a service, really, I think it doesn't matter how large your company is, how small, how sophisticated you are with technology, or right up to not knowing much, or down to, I guess, depending on what viewpoint you are, to what your knowledge is of technology. I think you pretty much fit on this maturity model here, where you're looking at service maturity on one axis and business value. So we still even have people out there today that are traditional reactive technology focus. And again, they've kind of put a hodgepodge of tools together, but there isn't really a model that it's actually mapped to the business objectives and really put together as an integrated system. And what's really interesting is RMM, remote monitoring and management, really dominates the MSP space and still today does. Conversely, in the enterprise space, ITSM tools, again, the ServiceNow, the Remedies, the Heats, those types of tools are kind of the dominant players in the enterprise, and not so much on monitoring and management. That tends to be line of business focused and vendor focused even as well. So there isn't really this idea of an integrated single pane of glass to manage application security network, again, across locations, across hundreds, if not thousands of devices, and again, gluing those together, having them take ITSM and really start to automate a lot of the end user generated, more chaotic reactive incidents today. So you see in the continuum, managed is certainly this next step of a more proactive, SLA based, with, again, introducing IT automation and RMM. Cloud has come along. I think cloud is the one thing that everybody, even on the end user side, understands how we personally use technology. We all leverage, kind of live on our phones, and certainly there's lots of applications that are available for consumers and for phone. And so that's really brought a new approach as well into the expectations of your end user as an IT department, the fact that they are, what their experience is in leveraging technology from a consumer perspective, and they expect that type of experience. On demand is really this next phase where we're looking at what happens after cloud. Well, on demand is this idea of very similar to an Amazon and App Store kind of experience. Why can't that be the way corporate IT runs within a mid-enterprise and enterprise, even eventually inside of an SMB organization as well? So that's really the evolution of how we see technology evolve and really provide a lot more value, as you see on the diagram, to the business as a result of that. We talked about the end user, and again, leave it to Google, right? I mean, my first experience with ServiceNow was several years ago, and actually one of their great sales engineers came in to see us and do a demo in Ottawa at our head office, and they did really the opposite of what I've ever seen anybody else in the IT management space do before. They actually started with the end user experience, and they started with the end user experience using American Express and Google as the examples of how they leverage the ServiceNow technology to really, as I said, bring IT service delivery out of the Flintstones into kind of this next generation as a service model. So that's really the requirement that we see more and more. It doesn't matter if you're using the most rudimentary ticketing system to the most complex implementation of ITIL and IT service management. The biggest thing missing, as Steve Jobs always said in the Apple development, it's easy to build technology. The last mile, or maybe the last inch, that's the most difficult is actually making it simple, right? And I think if anybody in the world taught us that, certainly Steve Jobs taught us that with, how they brought out the iPhone, the 10-year anniversary a few days ago of the iPhone, and certainly, some of the behemoth companies' success stories like Google that are out there. And what's interesting even is for all the thousands of employees that Google has, and all the different projects that they have under development, when you go into Google's website, you're not looking at, it's not like going into MSN, right? I mean, it's a very simple display of what their solutions are. And that's really, what we see in ITSM is the first thing, before you get back into, okay, let's find a new tool, let's go to the knowledge conference, let's go, and find the next thing that's going to actually solve process issues or people issues or whatever it may be. It's actually first, do a survey, talk to your end users, see how they want to consume technology. And this is actually how Google ultimately architected ServiceNow. So it could be a little bit different now, and it's obviously broader, but leave it to Google, right? Get support, get stuff, know stuff. And again, we'll show a little bit more of an expanded view of that from another company later on in the presentation. So how do we modernize IT? So it kind of starts with, again, what are some of the building blocks? Certainly Service Desk is a key thing. At Careworks, it's an area that we've spent $10 million on over the last 10 years, if you look at it from a standpoint of when an end user has an issue, and I always liken end user IT issues are kind of like when you have an issue with the bank. It's a bit of an out-of-body experience. It's one of those things that the last thing you want is to be put on hold, treated in kind of an impersonal nature with kind of somebody that doesn't really have much knowledge about you as an end user. I call it TARP. I mean, to deliver really phenomenal service. It's not tangible asset relief program for the folks down in the U.S. I know you guys have already went through that one. You don't want to hear that one again. But it's really delivering a tangible service that's automated, that's responsive and personalized. So think about that, right? And do it in the 24/7, always connected world. That's what we wake up every day to try to do and do in a better fashion at Careworks. So again, a little bit of a commercial on Careworks, but I digress. Back to the presentation. So how do you get there? I mean, you have to start somewhere. And again, starting somewhere is being on this presentation, filling out the polling questions that we just looked at. As I said, I mean, I think you wouldn't be on this call probably today if you didn't think there was areas that you could improve as an IT service organization internally. That's a phenomenal start. I mean, what I always say to internal IT organizations, think like you're an MSP, right? Think about customer satisfaction, end user satisfaction. That's really a critical element of what you do day in, day out to show value to the business, right? I mean, we all have those end users, whether it's, as an MSP or you internally as an IT organization that kind of, again, they have that one bad case and they do an end around and they try to find somebody at the VP level or C level to complain about their experience. But I mean, it's one of those things that there's a lot of components. Tools are one of them. It's not, I mean, you can't just go to knowledge, spend $500,000 on ServiceNow and all your pain and problems, disappear. It's one of those things. What's the objective first and foremost? And again, this idea of doing it yourself, what I would caution is start to look and leverage different service providers. If the service providers that you're using today, which may be, your traditional VAR or maybe a system integrator that's helped you with an application in the past, or some of your hardware or software vendors, look kind of beyond that. Look at organizations like the MSP Alliance, and they have an accreditation program that's built around SAS 70, right? So that looks at the safeguarding of personal information, and you as an MSP, that you follow standards that really you would want to follow internally within your organization as well. So certainly take a look, understand where you are, start to look at tool sets, whether it's monitoring or ITSM, leverage service. And I would say the one thing that's really difficult to do well is what I just talked about on the previous slide, delivering a personalized end user experience and being able to do that in the 24/7 world that we live in today. These are kind of steps in terms of if you currently have an ITSM solution, whatever shape or size that may be, some of the things to look to, right? So again, consolidating incident problem change, visualization and task boards, right? Driving action with service and asset awareness, making better decisions with dashboards and analytics. A big part of what we do is, okay, great, we deliver that Google-like, simplified experience for the end user. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done because there's a lot of other things running underneath. And one of the things that, definitely we see in the MSP space, and I would say that it's no different when you're with your CFO reviewing IT budgets, operations, where you're going to spend strategically and to keep the lights on with IT. And it's always one of those things that if I don't have an issue or I don't see things being fixed, then I don't have a problem anymore, right? It must be something that we can save costs on. So that's really one of the key things around dashboards and analytics, is to actually look and say, we're not having all these issues. Our end user incidents have kind of gone from 7,000 tickets a month to 4,000 tickets a month over the course of the last 12 to 18 months. Because again, we've leveraged self-service, we've leveraged automation to automate desktop maintenance and updates and those kinds of things. Again, really helping the end users help themselves. So a big part of, again, being able to bring that out of the dark hole and showing value to the business is, again, having those KPIs and reports available. And again, if you look at the traditional enterprise SLA on something like Service Desk, and I'd caution any of you, whether you're in procurement or you have to get across from your procurement folks internally in your enterprise, is, beware of the SLA, which is kind of that traditional enterprise outsourced service desk arrangement, where it's kind of, okay, there's 7,000 incidents that you're going to sign up to on a fixed fee, and this is, you got to sign on the dotted line for the next 3 to 5 years, whatever it may be. You should actually build an agreement that gives the capability of the MSP or your service provider to actually drive down the number of end user incidents through automation and self-service, and again, leveraging some 21st century tools to do it in a better way to, again, make people more productive so they're not having issues. Simplifying the work through visual task boards, and ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, having a single system of record. One of the really key things, and this is a project that we're working on now with our RMM vendor SolarWinds, is connecting SolarWinds with ServiceNow so we can start to have that operational automation, again, feeding information into the ITSM system. And again, what people call automation in the ServiceNow world is a little bit different than what people call automation in the managed services world, and certainly, we can get into that probably another day. In terms of how do we see you go forward, or what are one of the models that you, as a mid-market IT service provider, so somebody not with the budget of a 10,000 person company, have increased expectations to do more with less, deliver more value to the business, how do you actually go forward and find a solution for this? Managed ITSM, and again, there's a white paper that'll be sent out after this presentation today. Managed ITSM really fuses that automation and proactiveness of the MSP model with, again, this best-in-class, best practices of the ITSM model. And really, what Managed ITSM allows you to do is kind of address 4 key issues that basically are with you adopting it first and foremost, but also with the do-it-yourself model as well. So licensing and implementation of ITSM is astronomical, as we all know. ServiceNow has kind of their minimums in terms of, they won't pick up the phone to talk to you unless there's kind of a minimum ACV or annual contract value that you sign up to. You have to sign up to 3-year contracts. Remote monitoring and management isn't quite to that extent, but it's still, you're making, huge investments in something. And by, again, the polling earlier, there isn't a lot of you with kind of a integrated, comprehensive approach to remote monitoring and management. That's what I would tell anybody on the phone today. Follow up with our team. We're headquartered in Ottawa. There's a couple of companies that were actually started here in the MSP space. So certainly there's a lot of domain expertise in this area in terms of how to develop an RMM strategy, a comprehensive management strategy to look after your entire organization, plus how you marry it with ITSM, whether it's your current ITSM tool or you want to look at going with a new system as well. So certainly licensing implementation is a massive thing. Administration is the next thing. So if you have like I do, a son that just graduated out of university that's pretty technically savvy, tell them to become a ServiceNow consultant. That's what I would say is probably one of the best jobs that exists out there. Therein lies the challenge with even implementing your implementation of ServiceNow. So great, you're a 2,000 person law firm or a 2,000 person healthcare organization in Kansas City or wherever it may be. You've just invested $500,000 in implementation. You've got all your different modules set up. You send your 3 internal IT people on a ServiceNow admin training. 3 of them come back, 2 of them quit to become consultants and at quite a bit of a higher salary than they're making today. And you now have an implementation of ServiceNow that maybe comes out of the box initially and you can't mature for just the lack of having again, an organization to work with that maybe could provide remote system administration as well. So, and that exists across RMM, that exists across information security. In the polling question at the beginning that we put out, I think it was something like 2/3 or maybe 70% of people didn't have a comprehensive information security program. That, my friends, I mean, we all need that. And it's not as simple as, buying technology tools. It's not as simple as, putting a privacy policy up on your website. It's actually what's in the middle of that, right? So accreditations, certifications, how you protect digital data, physical information, what's your information security program look like? Beyond that, do you have an information security committee? How do you deal with challenges or breaches for security? There's, again, if there's one area in technology today to not do it yourself anymore, and if we haven't learned that the last few months with all that's gone on, definitely information security is a big one. And ITSM and RMM help in that area in a big way. As we mentioned earlier, personalizing the end user experience. So your end users, you can't, as the IT organization, force them how to use technology in a certain way anymore, or how they're going to get support. Or, put a ticket in and somebody on our help desk will get back to you. It's just not how their expectation today, again, because of their reliance on technology, is they want that experience that we talked about, kind of the Jimi Hendrix experience, kind of a very personalized end user experience, and again, knowledge of what it is that your company is, and definitely the person individually as a user, their challenges as well. Last but not least, and we'll touch on this one near the end, to deliver strategic value to the business, you need to actually understand what are the top 3 things that actually C-level executives think about in terms of technology, and we're going to touch on that. We're actually rolling out a company that's dedicated specifically to that, to help, again, educate and train, very similarly to what we did in the early days at Enable. So the 4 pillars of managed ITSM is ITSM as a service, hence the name that why we're here on this webinar. And again, we got a couple of different solutions: GrandCentral, which is powered by ServiceNow, Careworks Central, which is powered by ConnectWise. And as I mentioned, we have service desk arrangements with companies from 100 employees up to companies that are in the 10, 11,000 range. So the 4 pillars of managed ITSM is, again, having an ITSM tool, definitely service desk, and even looking at service desk in a co-managed model, right? Where, again, if you're a hospital or you're a senior care facility, 24/7 isn't like 24/7 at an accounting firm. It's really 24/7, right? I mean, you're running 3 shifts. And again, issues never tend to happen at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. It's usually 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, right? So definitely working strategically as an IT organization on who can we partner with that isn't offshore, again, an organization that's North American based, that again wakes up day in, day out with, again, how do we make our end users raving fans? That's another key part. That's this paradigm shift from internal IT to internal MSP in terms of your methodology or your philosophy as an organization. Number 3 is automation. So again, we touched on that, proactive monitoring and management, again, leveraging business continuity, cloud solutions, looking at where things fit and how they fit best. And then last but not least, for the ServiceNow folks on the call, remote system administration. And again, we've built a whole practice area for that to help augment anybody that's really struggling with their implementation, or again, may want to take their implementation up to the next level, to some of the new modules, maybe want to look at some of the new business functions like HR, facilities, some of the other areas that the phenomenal platform that ServiceNow is. This is kind of again, a basic picture of a end user portal leveraging Careworks Central, and this has kind of the basics that you see on the left hand side, and this is all customizable, kind of paint by numbers in terms of how you can put it together. So there's obviously a support center, a knowledge center or wiki, There's the ability to look at billing and information. There's also the ability to publish products as well, and again, be able to do that in a customizable fashion. And what you'd see there is kind of the IT user. It's role-based, so persona-based, where again, depending if you're an IT user versus you're the admin or the manager. Again, on the ServiceNow side, the product name that we've gone with is called Careworks GrandCentral. So this is basically an implementation of ServiceNow in a multi-tenant model with a middleware on it that really gives you the capability to be up and running in ServiceNow in days, in likely a couple of weeks, let's say, then in the endless project that could be 3, 4, 5 months to get to implementation. And that's where what we're seeing today is a lot of people that love the technology but may not be just quite ready to jump into the pool on implementing on a full implementation of their own instance. That's where ITSM as a service, and certainly our version of it, GrandCentral, fits really well. Take that and bolt together SolarWinds on the RMM side, and you've got really GrandCentral Station, let's call it, in terms of the power of that solution. I know our sales team on the managed ITSM side, they're seeing a lot of interest on that level as well, of putting together both the automation story with the ITSM story and doing it again with this Google, Apple-like experience for the end user. So this just gives you kind of a little bit of a breakdown of size of employees to kind of the fit of the 4 pillars, right? Whether it be ITSM as a service, managed services, service desk, or RSA. Even on the ITSM side, if you decide, and again, we have a bunch of those types of customers out there, where you decide a full implementation of ServiceNow is where you want to go versus the multi-tenant version, for whatever your reasons may be, that's certainly something that we can work with you on as well. And again, maybe in that case, we're rolling out the implementation of it. You're leveraging some managed services and remote monitoring, or maybe you're looking at Service Desk as being an entry point that you would look at. And typically, most of those implementations, whether it's GrandCentral or a full implementation, are going to leverage some form of our remote system administration service. So now we've kind of gone through that, and it's kind of technology as a service. We put it all together. So here's an example of, again, an implementation of a little bit beyond the Google implementation that I showed you earlier, but still, get stuff, order things. So again, you can have your product catalog in there. It could be Office 365. It could be whatever your heart's desire in terms of applications or physical products that can be put in to your end user portal. Knowledge. So again, top knowledge items that you want to put on password resets to again, Office 365, 101, whatever it may be, to obviously the different mechanisms of get help. One of the things that we're looking at as well is, the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, people's smartphones are kind of stapled to their hand. How do we make it really easy for them to get support off their phone? Hence, again, the UI that you see here that's again maximized for smartphone use versus on a desktop. Some quick links. So again, catalog items, again, familiarity. So the branding, you have chat up on the top, you have searchability. Again, this can all be customized and branded to your organization, down to collaboration on the bottom right-hand side, right? So your end user community, let them, be able to go back and forth and talk about how-tos on the latest rollout that IT had, that sort of stuff. So definitely you can see where with the proper implementation of ITSM, the proper implementation of RMM on products and cloud and that kind of stuff, it really starts to put together that next generation of self-service and really doing it in an IT storefront type fashion. Now we're going to get into kind of what I talked about, that fourth item of ESP. So really for you as a mid-market IT leader, and this is this new knowledge platform that we're about to announce called Taskforce. It's going to be just amazing. We're going to be working with ITSMF, with the MSP Alliance on the service provider side, some other industry organizations as well, and building up a phenomenal community of both of IT leaders, both from an end user perspective, from a service provider MSP perspective, and from a vendor perspective, really built around you as the IT organization. So again, with this idea of what are the 3 things that your boss, the C-level, care about, and again, navigating those allows you to become this internal MSP philosophically as an organization and ultimately run IT like a business. So it's top secret right now. And again, the website is going to be launched over the next week or so with the full launch of the knowledge platform on November 1st. The key things that we look at is experience. So the ESP end user experience, and what are the key components of that? Security, what are the key components of that for you as an IT leader? And then ultimately performance. And the ESP framework, we call this the Hollywood Squares, kind of breaks again into this kind of maturity concept of the basics, advanced, and what we see as next generation. So with experience, ITSM is obviously, it's really the starting point, right? IT automation is remote monitoring and management, and cloud, what we talked about earlier. IT storefront was that Commonwealth Bank end user portal that I just showed you. So this idea of pulling it all together, giving you the tools, the resources, the partnerships, the ability to collaborate within a task force community is going to be tens of thousands of mid-market IT leaders. Not only giving you the resources, but training from an online perspective. There's going to be boot camps that run regionally all around North America, and also at some of the larger industry events as well. So IT service management, modules, training, subject matter experts in those areas, IT automation, IT storefront. Next is security. So first and foremost, what all the security vendors like, tools of the trade, right? So what are all the latest, greatest that's out there from Cisco, Meraki, AVG, ESET, Symantec, McAfee, all the different guys that are out there. But again, putting that into programs, and again, what is your information security, kind of the three pillars of building an information security program. What are some of the accreditations that you need to be looking at, either internally, things like CISP, or even in how you engage the market? What's the importance for you as a healthcare provider to be looking at engaging with service providers and vendors that know what HIPAA is, that actually go through some formalized auditing and assurance that they actually comply with the HIPAA standards. So again, there's going to be big areas in that information security toolkits available for the community. Last but certainly not least is the world that we live in today that almost really threatens the functionality of the internet for business and for us as individuals. So cybersecurity, we're going to have some really phenomenal speakers and thought leaders and obviously companies involved in that, and in how you develop a strategy to be able to deal with things like ransomware, those sorts of things. So all of the data that sits on smartphones, right, and people are out there, and how you geofence data and those sorts of things. So again, some great things in that area. Last but not least is performance, and performance is needs to be explained probably a little bit more. We really break performance down into the three reasons technology exists. One, to operate your business; the next, to communicate your business; and the third, to manage your business. And by operate is IT operational items, hardware, software, service. How do we do that? And again, this as a service, more effective model. Communication is how to, and you as the IT department, this may not even be your responsibility, but I guarantee you the CEO in your organization doesn't care about technology unless the technology is helping you as an organization communicate for sales and marketing and to customers in a more effective way, or to be able to service your customers in a more effective way. So things like social media and all the different tools around there, other areas like your website and CRM and those sorts of things. And last but not least, manage. So it's kind of the three estates of management. Initially was ERP, accounting. Next came along CRM. The third estate is service management, right? Is both service management, which ITSM is obviously the foundation of, but more this next evolution of service management, which is around business processes, HR, facilities, really managing business processes in a much more effective way. So that's the ESP framework. It's being launched live, Fusion 17 in Orlando on November 1st. So I hope that you guys can join us if you're in that area. Fusion is a great conference as well. We're actually going on the phone with the president of ITSMF USA after this call, who are the hosts of it with the Help Desk Institute. So So, I mean, in terms of 3 takeaways from today, one of the things is do what your CFO does. And again, I think I can speak fairly intelligently about this as an accountant. Your CFO doesn't do everything, right? Your internal accounting department doesn't do transfer pricing or tax, or looks at cross-border items, or how you look for tax savings and those sorts of things, audit, a whole myriad of different things. They leverage outside experts for legal, for financial, for audit, for tax advice, those sorts of things. So do the same thing that your accounting department does by not trying to, again, take on the huge challenge of what it takes to run an IT organization today. Next, and again, stay tuned on the task force website. There'll be a whole community of vendors, MSPs. Again, it's going to be agnostic to MSPs. And obviously, it's all about, as I mentioned earlier, giving you, as the internal IT department, really an MBA in IT to actually understand some of the things that you probably understand anyways, but maybe to give you some ideas, both from a standpoint of knowledge and training, but also within the peer group as well. Last but not least, and again, the white paper on the dawn of managed ITSM will be sent out either later today or tomorrow. Engage our team. We got a phenomenal team, if nothing else, than to just bounce some ideas off and understand things like, you know what, my average cost per incident is $16 per user per month, right? Is that industry average for is that high, low, whatever? Looking at things like building your metrics for your service desk in terms of service metrics. I mean, there's a ton of domain expertise that you can gain through engaging with our team. The next webinar you see at the very bottom is ServiceNow as a Service, so a product demo and action on October 11th at 2 p.m. So you can definitely register where you registered for this. And certainly if you're on our email list, information will be sent out on that. So in terms of questions, so the first question is, in your opinion, what is the company size that needs to have an ITSM tool in place? So I would say, definitely, a company, a mid-market company in kind of the low hundreds of employees. So let's say 100 to 500 employees. You're going to look to, a software as a service model if you're going to implement something like ServiceNow. And there's certainly engaging organizations like Careworks will give you the ability to get into a technology like that, which again is used by 35% of the global 1,000. And be able to get into it at a reasonable price. I would say, though, in terms of ITSM, large or small as an organization, take a look holistically at your entire IT organization and kind of maybe automation is one of the areas that you've got to address first. But so again, I think in the lower mid-market, there's kind of a bunch of different tools you can be leveraging. You could be leveraging something like GrandCentral. You may have an existing tool today. That may not be the first thing that you got to address, right? I mean, it may be getting more responsive with end users or again, implementing automation into your organization. Full implementations of mature ITSM solutions, it's going to be companies in the high hundreds, low thousands, obviously up, as I said, into the enterprise organizations. Looking along the way as you invest in those, who's going to be the administrator, right? Who's going to be able to take it to the next level? Who's going to be able to build it like Google in that early phase, if not, again, the example of Commonwealth that I gave you earlier. So again, I would definitely reach out to our folks on the managed ITSM side, and they can do kind of a deep dive with you on current tools, current processes, current people, figure out, okay, we got to look at a cost savings initiative. We have budget. This is our current budget. Or yes, we can increase our budget if we improve X, Y, and Z. And I think that'll kind of take you on one of those 3 paths pretty quickly. Next question is, do you work with companies that have a large IT department and a security plan in place? Absolutely. We like those companies, actually. I think in looking at the 4 pillars of managed ITSM that I showed earlier, it could be somebody, like a University of Southern California who was on not the last webinar in this series, but the first one that, again, they're users of of ServiceNow, and they're leveraging us for level 1 service desk and also some help around ServiceNow as well. So again, there's a great customer testimonial from University of Southern California, and safe to say, yes, they do have a very large implementation on ITSM and a security plan in place for sure. Next question is there a significant cost savings in deploying ITSM as a service versus hiring our own ServiceNow administrator? Your own ServiceNow administrator, and again, I think I can pretty much speak across North America, is well in the 6 figures, right? You're looking at one, in places like Silicon Valley or in any of the major markets in the US, you're looking at probably 130 to 150, for that person. So I would say that is definitely a driver around ITSM as a service. Maturity is another one as well, right? Is trying to take your system beyond just being incident management and starting to look at some of these other areas. So ServiceNow is an incredible company at selling the dream and obviously delivering on the dream if you have the money to be able to get there. But again, the people aspect, both in terms of service desk, but also the RSA, the remote system administration side, I think there's a huge opportunity for anybody. If you're an IT organization of, let's say, less than 20 people, so you're probably looking at, a company of 1,000 or 2,000 employees or below, investing in a ServiceNow administrator, I mean that, and even taking on a full implementation of ServiceNow, I would suggest to definitely call us, talk, do some due diligence on the space, and there's other solutions that could be out there instead of a full implementation for you. So the last question, and I think we're up against or maybe even over a touch, is elaborating on remote monitoring and management and its role in automating our IT. So the best thing to do is again, get a demo of it. And again, Jason Murphy, or one of our senior sales engineers, would be happy to take you guys through. Basically what it is, it's a monitoring and managing across your organization, device, applications, security, whatever the network protocol, whether it's SNMP, whether it's Windows Event Viewer, syslog, whatever it may be. And the cool thing about the RMM solutions, the remote monitoring and management solutions that have really been built for the MSP space, they're kind of similar to the ITSM, the bigger ITSM tool sets, in that they're platforms. They're built with a lot of customizability, a lot of capability to hook into a lot of different vendor systems even. So again, if you're running a Cisco infrastructure as an example, there's ways and systems both out of the box within our RMM solution that we implement, or even hooking into the third-party vendor tools to be able to, again, get deep information on performance management, again, that you can tune and set to send thresholds and alerts and incidents up into your ITSM system, right? So that's kind of one element of it. The endpoint side of things is everything from antivirus to, as I said, managing the desk side, managing even the mobile devices and the end user, and automating as much as possible. So before they get that blue screen from security or a bad software update or patch or whatever it may be, the monitoring and management system will grab that, be notified on that, and it'll be, in a lot of cases, fixed before the end user even has an issue. You implement an RMM system, you can automate anywhere from 50 to 80% of your current incidents within 6 months. And again, that's where reporting becomes a critical aspect as well. So it's really interesting as we've engaged the mid-enterprise market. As I said, it's very similar to what we've seen in the MSP space a few years ago. And again, I think there's some great tool sets that again can be retrofitted into the mid-market, and again married with best-in-class tools on the ITSM side of things to really start to build what we talked about earlier, and then really start to get into some interesting things like self-service and some of the things around machine learning that's happening and that sort of stuff down the road to really kind of take automation to a new level in the future. Thank you very much for joining us today, folks. And there's my email. Reach out to me. Happy to talk to you guys. Stay tuned again for some great stuff coming down the pipe from Careworks and also the launch of Taskforce. Thank you very much.